Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another Intelligent Style Salon. I'm Catherine Cassidy, CEO of Boutique Box. You may know by now, but again, in case you're watching this on the flip side, somewhere out in the ethers of the internet, Boutique Box is helping professional women curate a wardrobe they love. We will be getting dressed for work again. What you wear while you work from home does matter. But we are doing this by connecting the dots between the designers that we collaborate with and you. We deliver intelligent style to your door because you tell us who you are, what you're looking for, where you're going, and how we can help you. So this Intelligent Style Salon series is inspired by, empowering women to show up in their whole self. And style is, for me, and clothes are a catalyst for confidence. So it's one piece of the puzzle of how do you show up? What do you want to create for yourself? And for Boutique Box, it's like, and how can we help you do that? How can we help that become your reality? And so with everything that came around with everything since March 2020, there was a lot of change and uncertainty. And 12 years as an entrepreneur has taught me to just expect uncertainty and expect change. So that's why I was like, I think it was a little too early to talk about pivots way back when, even though everybody was pivoting. But I had this thought, you know what? Brandi is perfect to come in and talk about the power of the pivot and maybe the power of not pivoting sometimes. The ups and downs and all arounds of growing a business. And because what a lot of people are experiencing right now, we've been living through for quite some time. It's a different level. I'm not going to say that this collective experience is not, I don't know what the right words are, but because there's a lot of emotional and there's a trauma element to what's going on right now too. So it's not quite the same, but there are tools and resources that we have created over the years or tapped into that has helped us keep moving forward. And so Brandi and I connected in 2013, I think it was, with a coach that we were both working with. It was our first year working with that coach. And I think, Brandi, was it your first year as well?
No, you were there for a little while. I think it was early 2015. You had been there for at least a year first. And then I came in.
Okay. So. Well, then it was just basically once I met Brandi, the point was hi, we're going to be friends. It was the drive, the ambition, the commitment to growth, just the, how you show up as a person. And, the thing is with business, it's there are always going to be challenges. With life, there are always going to be challenges. And the way that you approach it is okay, what you got? What are we doing next then? So those are the kind of people that I'm going to bring in my corner, and just so brilliant. I feel like I should I'm not going to read your bio because it was up there, but I'm this is exactly why Brandi is perfect for this conversation on pivoting. Especially
just my background
context.
Does it.
Because not only, you were pivoting way before you started your business.
I was pivoting into academia, going from theater. Exactly. I went from theater to religion to philosophy. I don't want to say I went to physics because physics had kind of been there the whole time. And then I went to then I was I'll be a philosopher and go to grad school. And then I was no, I'll just work for NASA and write for them. And next thing I know, I started a biz instead. So go figure. I couldn't have guessed it myself.
Perfect that you're wearing your star shirt today. That's so okay. So let's take a step back to, Brandi's evolution of, I guess, for lack of a better term, intelligent style, because it really, that's about what do you want and what are you creating for yourself? Style is just one part of what you're creating in the world and how you're showing up to do that. But like you said, it was sort of a path through academia, but you worked throughout that time too.
I did. I had different sorts of jobs throughout that entire time. So
you went and you studied, you went and you worked.
Yes.
Walk us through sort of that evolution of the thought process and realizing Okay, I like this, but I don't like this. So what's next? How do I
Yeah.
shift?
I mean, I think the first big shift for me really came with, I went to New York University for theater. And so it was a really kind of very intense exposure to New York City and to what theater and the acting industry and movies and things like that looked like. And I started school there in 1998. So when I was a senior was fall 2001. So I was there in New York City on September 11th, and I had kind of started to feel a pivot before then. Like I started really getting like close exposure to the industry, and I was like, this is not, there's something else I have that I need to give, and I don't know how to define it yet, but I kind of started getting restless. I would say probably like early 2001, in my junior year. And when September 11th happened, it was kind of very clear to me, like, I don't think I can give my real gifts solely by being an actor. And I need to find that other thing. So I really let it be an experiment, which I don't think I realized quite at the time, but I started just taking classes and just kind of like following whatever it was that really interested me. I was working as a tutor at the time, and then eventually I went on to actually run a tutoring center. And just kind of kept following, like one class led to another. So, I had been taking religion classes at NYU and continued that at Rutgers. Thought I was going to go into religion, applied to a few schools, discovered that I wasn't religious enough to be a religion major.
Oh my goodness.
Which is always fun. Religion led to philosophy led back into physics again, which had been a major of mine briefly when I was in NYU. So, and I thought, hey, I could really do this philosophy of science thing. Like, it's really interesting to have these meta conversations around science and physics and what it means to be in this universe. Cause that's really what physics does. Like, like the really like beautiful thing about philosophy of physics is all about like quantum mechanics and like these dual states. And, it's a lot of fun. So I thought, hey, that's what I would do. Ended up in grad school, and absolutely had that moment about midway through my 2 years at grad school. It should have been, it was a PhD program, so I should have been there for like 8 years to infinity. But midway through my 2 years there, there was something not sitting well with me. And I had a conversation with the grad advisor there, who I don't think, like, I was thinking about this conversation yesterday because I was talking with a friend of mine, and I don't know if he ever told me like explicitly that I wasn't allowed to be who I was, but that's kind of what I heard in the conversation with him, is that I had been giving too much of my time to other things, namely blogging. I had a lifestyle blog and a food blog, and was actually ranked one of the top bloggers in San Diego while I was there. And kind of just heard in this conversation from him that I needed to step up and give up some of the things that I loved in order to be a philosopher. And that was another kind of very pivotal moment for me of going, I have more to give than this. And if I start squashing parts of myself, it's not going to work out well. So,
oh my gosh, absolutely. That's wild.
Yeah.
But also, I don't know. And like, I started questioning being raised Catholic as soon as I learned about the Crusades. I was like, that doesn't sound very love thy neighbor. So,
Yeah.
It's an interesting element, but disappointing. And also it's so funny to me because I feel like it makes me think of, the existential, like, philosophy is it's this conversation around like, what is life? And like who you are holistically, like, is that conversation. Yeah. So, but that wasn't where, that, but interesting. So you moved from San Diego to DC, right?
Yeah, I did. I actually did a big road trip first. So I rode trip from San Diego to Vancouver, and then down across to New Jersey, applied for jobs while I was living back with my parents in New Jersey, and landed a job at a nonprofit in DC. So I moved down to the DC area, and I was at that nonprofit roughly for about 2 years before again, same thing, just like something wasn't sitting right with me. I want more for my life than a cubicle. And particularly it got to me in the winter where I'm like, I don't see the sun. Like I don't feel it on my skin. So maybe it's time to think of something else. And that's actually, I had no ambition to start a business. And it's funny because a couple months ago I did a little like summit with a bunch of other like designers, and and the question that they wanted to ask me is like, how did you decide that you wanted to start an agency? And I'm like, I didn't. It just kind of grew out of what I was doing. I don't quite think of it like that all the time, but yeah, so it was actually right around, I would say 2013 that I decided to leave my job, which everyone thought I was crazy, start my business, which was really, Brandi's going to be a freelance developer. That's all I thought it was going to be. And then about a year and 8 months later, that's when I met you in business coaching, in a mastermind pretty much. So.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is, pause, think it through, pivot, like go. And why I wanted to reflect that back is because, you were taking the moment to think about what's not right, what doesn't feel right. You listened to yourself. You were like, let's do this. You took action, and like, you just took action. Like you didn't second guess yourself. You didn't, maybe there was a moment there where you did, but if there was, like, you didn't.
I think you always, when you're going through change, you always second guess the moment, that period of time.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this today because there are small pivots, like a restaurant that used to have diners in and is now doing takeout. Like they haven't really significantly changed what they do. They just change how they do it. And then I think there are bigger pivots. And I think those bigger pivots of like leaving grad school and doing something else, or leaving my job and starting a business, I think those bigger pivots are always moments when you pivot more towards yourself. You have like, you get a sense that like something's not right, something's a little off. And I think it works best, obviously, if you do pivot towards yourself, like more of your true self, and start discovering that along the way, as opposed to, I don't see a big pivot as just like a random pivot. There's an intentionality behind it. And so that's kind of like how I felt at the time too, where I was like, this is not going to reveal my whole self to me. I didn't have those words at the time, but I certainly, I felt like there was something like I couldn't, I would regret going on like this if I just continued in my status quo at the time. And I didn't know when I would regret it, but I knew it would happen eventually, whether it was a year, 2 years, 3 years. And I knew that for me, that's when I felt it was time to make the change. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you sharing it that way, and also the way you reflect it back and your philosophy.
What happened?
Or I can't, that was a mouthful. What was it called again? PhD in philosophy of science?
Yes.
Okay. But that was, the metaphysical quantum analysis, moving towards yourself, pivoting towards yourself. Like, what a powerful sentiment, and how much permission that gives someone to be like, this doesn't feel right. I'm going to take stock of why it doesn't. I'm going to think like, so what does this next step look like? And what I wanted to point out before too was just taking the step too, because that led to, maybe you didn't stay down that route, but that led to the next step, and then the next step that led you, to where you are now. And, you're still pivoting, you're still, taking the teeny steps or the teeny pivots, and there probably will be another big pivot. I mean, like you mentioned, you didn't really start your freelance business to grow it into an agency. You just were starting to see, again, the things that you liked about what you were doing and the things that you didn't like. And like, okay, so what do we build this around? And every step of the way, do I still want to keep going with this too? Which I think is important to recognize as well.
I'm totally still doing that now too. And I think this is a really interesting time. Like, at the very beginning of quarantine, for a lot of people, I don't think you could have really asked the pivot question, because we hadn't started to be transformed by it yet. Like we haven't processed it. We hadn't been a little transformed by it. We hadn't been in the discomfort of it quite yet. And so even for me, like I didn't have much of a, it's not like I was working a job and then had lots of space because of quarantine. Like my work has kept up very steadily during this time. But even just because of the time, I'm having this moment of, okay, there is another little pivot that needs to happen. It's not a close this business, start a new one sort of thing, but I'm transforming like how I do the business and what my role looks like in the business and how I'm giving my genius as it starts to emerge more and more to my clients. And then how like my non-genius stuff, which, we all have our non-genius stuff that we're good at and we could totally do, but how do I give that away even more and not take that back on? So it's an ongoing process, really, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you go to Alchemy+Aim's website, the blog, you'll see like what a beautiful writer Brandi is too. So I'm curious to see how that evolves for you, especially, I mean, even just, I'm like, okay, so are you going to write a book on your journey? Like coming back to yourself, pivoting to yourself. I think the world needs that right now.
It was funny. I had an idea. I wrote 2 articles recently and posted them in Medium because I was just like, I have to get this out of me. It's coming, like there are things that are coming through me right now. And there was an idea for a 3rd article that I had after a friend of mine did a meditation in like a group that I was talking to. And it was so funny because I mentioned it to someone maybe about a week ago, and she stopped and she's like, that should be a book. And I'm like, oh, maybe you're right. Like maybe that should be a book. So it's kind of funny you say that too, because I don't think it's going to be a big book. I think it's going to be like a flexible book that's easy to put in the mail and mail to people sort of book, but nicely done. Yeah. But I kind of feel like, oh, that's actually a thing that I think I have to write it more about. And it's, again, even for me, like I love writing. I hate writing. It just, you got to go deep with it.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I love about what you're doing with Alchemy+Aim is a reflection of your journey, because you really are helping thought leaders with their, like, putting themselves out there and creating their, space in the world for themselves too. And these are people that have done similar work in terms of the work that they're doing and putting out there is because of all of these pivots that they've done. If you check out her website, she's worked with some pretty cool people, you guys. So there's no accident as far as like why people would want to work with Alchemy+Aim, with you as the leader, because of the space that you hold in creating, and helping them put this work out there. So it's a really interesting sort of like dynamic that you have, because it's time to create your stuff that makes you the thought leader. But you're also helping everyone hold their space in the world with their work too. So, well, I think with that, you just took us down I think this was just such a fun journey. And I feel like it's time to sort of open up the conversation. I don't know if you have anything that you would want to add. I'm going to link your Medium articles below when we put this on YouTube. And so that people can read it. And it's just so beautiful. I'm like, like, I can't even, I don't know if you edited that, how much you edited it, but it was like every word was just like so well done. I was like, I want to write like Brandi.
Well, thank you. I will say, I probably did a round of editing before I was just like, you know what, and it's good enough, and I'm putting it out there in the world. Like that's really where I get to. We are all huge critics of our own work. So absolutely. I just try to silence the voice and just be like, and get it out there in the world. If it's crap, so be it. The next time I write something, it'll be less crap. Correct. And so on and so forth. But people have responded really well to them, and that's really just exciting. Just to be able to share ideas with people.
Absolutely. The power in the pivot. Sometimes you got to pause. Think, take stock.
Breathe.
Sometimes you pivot. Maybe sometimes you don't. I think it's sort of an interesting, which brings me to just one final thought as far as like a pivot or change is something that could feel really scary. And it feels like, oh my God, I have to do this again. Like I have to go through this again. But to the point of what Brandi shared, as far as like, it's just bringing you closer to yourself, like it's moving you back to yourself. And that's a very like vulnerable and scary place to be. Sometimes it's really easy to be like, this is my job, this is what I do. And I think that that's part of what this time is opening up for people, because you're not, okay, is this my, like, is this me? Is my job me? So, just give yourself permission to pause and reflect and decide, okay, what feels like the right next step? And then, like Brandi does, just go do it, because you're going to learn and you're going to pivot again.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be big too. Like I really thought, actually it was right when I met you, Catherine, that I thought I had to give up my business and do something completely different after like 2 years of my business. And I just started doing like little things. I was like, I'm going to hire a person. Okay. I'm going to hire another person. Oh, wait, that worked. Nope, that didn't work. Oh, so I feel like I've only done a few sharp right turns in my life. But even I think, sometimes even within what you are doing, or the company you work with, or the organization, business you run, whatever, like it is, you can do little pivots. You've done that too, Catherine, where you've, iterated on what Boutique Box was, and like what it's becoming, and it'll continue to iterate. So
absolutely. Yeah, no, it's true. I didn't really share too much of my pivot story, but I took a massive pivot, and I thought, all right, here's Boutique Box. We're going to do it like this then, closing you styled to shipped. And I was like you were saying, I was trying to do these little pivots like with you styled and Boutique Box. And it just kind of wasn't working. Like, it just didn't feel good. Like, it just felt like this business isn't serving me anymore. It doesn't allow me to serve people. And everything just kind of stopped working, if I'm totally honest, which is a weird place to be, not because I expect things to work, but because I believe that when you're on the right path, like, you may not everything's going to work 100%, but it's going to work enough to keep you moving forward. And so I was like, okay, something's not right here. And I tried to shift to just speaking. And then that wasn't really working, because like companies see style as something that they don't want to address, or at least historically they have, because it's like brings up all the stuff that women have been moving through on their own individually over the years around showing up and body image and things that they're told they have to do and whatnot. So in any case, it wasn't working. So I was like, okay, took a step back, was going to get a job. That didn't work. Again, I was like, well, I'm really smart. Like, what the heck? Why don't you people want to hire me? And came to, everything sort of brought me back to Boutique Box. And like, those were the little things that kept working. People weren't feeling like Stitch Fix was helping them, or other solutions that I thought were going to solve the problem for women, which is all I cared about. Conversations that just kept happening, kept saying, nope, it's not working. So I launched Boutique Box, soft launched in September of 2018. We did our first like in-person sessions December of 2018, and have continually iterated ever since. And it's been interesting with this pandemic, because it's like, for me, the pivot hasn't been so much of a pivot as like a double down on what I've always wanted it to be about. And, letting go of some of the focus of sales, even though we need them to come back and keep the business going forward. It's been like, well, I care about the woman. I care about the women that we're serving. And so doubling down on some of the things, that the messaging, and, and we're going to actually be layering in an education element to it that I've been trying to figure out this whole time. So as much as I thought I had to step away from styling, and because I really wanted it to be about every woman defining her style for herself, I realized that is possible, but you need a little bit of guidance to get your momentum going, your mojo going. And so we're going to be creating that for you. So sometimes it does mean totally letting go and like letting everything fall away. Doesn't always have to be like that. The majority of my pivots, to Brandi's point, have been like little lessons in, well, we tried that didn't work. We tried that, this did work. Or, in every single situation, there's a learning that keeps the moving forward happening. Like, okay, so I share that little final bit. and Brandi, if you have anything to add, for sure, please do, of, you know, sometimes it can feel like, but I followed my intuition. I followed what I felt like I needed to do next, and it didn't work. So I shouldn't follow my intuition or my gut, or, you know, like taking that next step is a risk. But every time I've taken that step, even if it didn't work the way that I wanted it to, it ultimately was something that did move me forward just a little bit differently. So the power in the pivot.
Exactly.
Well, Brandi, thank you so much for sharing your journey and your just little nuggets of wisdom that you just so casually pepper in there.
Happy to. Always fun to have these conversations.
So you all got to witness a bit of her brilliance. And with that, I will thank everyone who's watching after the fact, and we're going to get to the conversation with those who are here. Thank you.